good morning, afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening to us, and how you're listening to us. Thank you for making the sports and the world podcast a part of your day. I'm LaDarius.
And I'm Chris.
And, once again, hope all of you are safe. Big sports weekend, lots to cover. We're going to be covering NFL today, for the most part, but we got to show some love for baseball. So I don't know if you've been watching, some of the baseball, Chris. I know I've been watching, as much as I can, so much, sports played, but a lot of teams clinched, and still a lot of great divisional races going on. So give me your thoughts on what's going on in baseball so far.
A lot of the teams that I said would make the playoffs, in fact, did. The one that's on the fringe right now. I'll use that since we were talking about some golf in our pregame plans. Right now is the Blue Jays. So they're actually teeter-tottering with the Astros right now. Now, if I would have said that 4 months ago, I would have been laughed out of a room. I don't even know how honestly the Jays even can on base. Like, I mean, they're in a series right now with New York, and I mean, the Yanks are just blowing them out of the water. Gio Urshela last night was just, he was banging some balls all over Toronto and just making a mockery of that team. But there are some shockers who on where they're sitting and what position. First and foremost in the AL, the number one team is the Rays. We talked about them earlier in the season and talked about the potential of them if they played their cards right, and they definitely have. They won some very, very crucial games against New York earlier in the season, and I think that was a huge help. Of course, because half of our team ended up on the DL before like game 20 of the season. Somehow, some way, it never fails. So I think that did help them a lot because that took the wind out of our sails. We dropped that series to them, and I think the Yanks went on like a 10-game skid. They ended up pulling themselves back out, back up, and they've been playing some serious ball as of late. But so as of right now, as of today, the playoffs are lining up. The number 1 seed Rays going against the number seed 8 Blue Jays. The number 2 White Sox against the number 7 Indians. The number 3 Athletics versus the number 6 Astros, and the number 4 Twins going against the number 5 Yankees. I'll just go ahead and apologize to Twins fans in advance. You guys operate normally like the Notre Dame and Ohio State. When you put them into a bowl situation, you get smoked. So Twins, you always make it to the playoffs, but you really can't do anything outside of that. So kudos to you. Over on the national side of the league, where you hang out at with your Cubbies, they clinched. So you got the number 1 Dodgers right now going against the number 8 Brewers, the number 2 Braves going against the number 7 Reds, the number 3 Cubbies, your boys, going against the number 6 Marlins, and the number 4 Padres, who you were also super, super high on in preseason, going against the number 5 Cardinals. The Padres clinched their division, the Cubbies clinched theirs, the Braves clinched theirs, and the Dodgers clinched theirs. If you guys remember, when baseball season kicked off, I told you that the Braves were going to be the team to watch in the NL, and I'm happy to see that find its way through. I think they've been playing some serious ball. I'm happy to see them finally going somewhere. As naturally, I want to see my boys win it all. We'll see what happens. Thankfully, Sanchez is out of his batting slump and just playing like absolute shit. And just like last season, there's a lot of AAA guys that have stepped up into the majors and have stand toe-to-toe with people that have been playing in the majors for years and out-pitching them or out-catching them or out-fielding them. And happy to see it, man. Number one, I'm happy that we got a baseball season because I was really, really thinking that we weren't going to get one, to be honest with you, just up front. So the fact that we got one, and it's been exciting to watch. I've been trying to watch as many games as I can. It does suck without having the crowd. Hopefully next year everyone can stop fearing a sickness and we can go back out and live normal lives and shit like that. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm excited, man. It's getting to be that Mr. October time. We might not have a Reggie Jackson or a Derek Jeter here to do their thing, but I think there's some young blood in the MLB that can fill those shoes right now. That's what I got on that.
Yeah. And you know what, Chris? I think you're right because when it comes to certain sports, I think we always worry about who's next, the next crop of stars, and I feel that baseball's fine. Outside of Mike Trout, who I still think is the best player in baseball. Mike Trout, in my opinion, is gonna end up probably being like the Karl Malone of Major League Baseball. He's gonna play a lot of great seasons, but may not win a ring because of the organization. Like organization, but that's just my take on that. But when you look at guys like Acuna, Fernando Tatis, you got like Chris. There's talent everywhere. You got Manny Machado. Chris, baseball's fine talent wise. It's the youth movement. Go look at Chicago. Look at the White Sox. And usually don't talk about the White Sox, for obvious and legal reasons. But I give them a lot of credit. Like Tim Anderson, I believe he's leading the league in batting average. I'm not sure he's in the top 5. And you got Giolito. You got like Dallas Keuchel's on the staff. I think he's like number 3 or 4 in the rotation. Like Chris, this team, and we talked about in the beginning, Chris, that this season is a sprint, not a marathon, and that benefits teams who come out the gate just like I think of it like a horse race. Like you got to come out there, you got to get a lead, or because you can't really lay back. There's no room for error. But to wrap up, to talk about my Cubs, I give a lot of credit to David Ross. I think, first-time manager, first-year manager at that. Managing under, imagine this being your first season as a manager, and you have to manage under what's going on. I think here, and like Jace Tingler for the Padres, same situation, and the success they're getting. I think what's most impressive to me, Chris, about the Cubs is the pitching. It's, to me, that was my number one question mark. Look at you, Darvish, the professor Kyle Hendricks, I think we're fine. And most importantly, and I'll say this, catchers, and you had a very good talk about catchers, in an episode not too long ago about catchers and how undervalued they are. David Ross is a catcher, and he can understand because who talks to the pitcher, who's to me the point guard of, but I think I said that. Who's the point guard of the field, of the diamond? It's the catcher. And having a catcher in that managerial position, I remember like Mike Matheny, with the Cardinals, and he also had a great catcher named, Yadier Molina too. So it helps to have that sort of structure there. But Glass baseball, I'll talk about basketball in a future episode. But now I just want to dive into football. A lot of good things. Every team, this is a fun fact. Every team that was favored, won, except that team in Philly, and I'm not going to get into that either. Well, maybe I will, but just Chris, give me your thoughts on a very interesting week 2, injuries, stars. Just your thoughts.
People were dropping like flies. It was. I'm not gonna lie. So I'm in 2 big leagues. I'm in the league that you and I are in, and then I'm in a second league that's honestly just as competitive. And so I was actually playing a mutual friend of ours. I won't put him on air just because I love him. I'll tell you who it is later. But I was playing a mutual friend. I almost blew out by 100 points this weekend because of injuries. I definitely smoke checked him quite elegantly in fashion, I guess you could say. But the injuries. So first and foremost, I'll start with my boys, the Jets, and just work my way around. So the 49ers apparently feel that the Meadowlands is like an unsafe stadium, even though the Jets and the Giants are there weekly. One of them are playing at home. Not too sure how that works out, how it's unsafe, but potato, tomato, it just sounds like your strength and conditioning didn't do its job. Um, Essentially, everybody but the water boy got injured on the 49ers this week. I saw Bosa's out for the season. Jimmy G is week to week. Kittle was already out. Mostert took the plunge as well. Just the entire game was just, I got to watch a little bit of it as I was flipping through channels. Typical fashion, the Jets just shit the bed thanks to Adam Gase. He looked absolutely terrible as a coach. So, I mean, just absolutely terrible. Just when you think you can't get any worse, he does. I know you wanted to go on a rant about your Falcons. I'm gonna let you handle that. But I don't know how much more Gase could do. I mean, to get fired, I'm blown away at this point. And Darnold is out there just like one of the passes. I forget what play it was, but the offensive line, of course, wasn't protecting him. So this poor kid's running for his life like he typically does. He's running to the left side of the field as his receiver was running to the opposite side of the field, back shoulder off leg like a Lamar Jackson sidearm pass. Perfect execution. This kid has so much talent, and it's going to be wasted because of Adam Gase, and I legit feel bad for him. But the Jets suck, and we all know it. So I mean, I don't even know why I'm harping on it. Some of the other games that were really fun to watch, I got to see a little bit of the Baltimore and Houston game. That was a fun one to watch. Naturally, the Bengals and the Browns. I think both you and I were wrong in that game. That was actually a fun game to watch. I'll slap myself on the hand on that one. That was a good game. Naturally, your Falcons and Cowboys. I'm gonna let you 100% handle that. I don't know what happened in LA, but somehow the Chargers almost ended up beating the Chiefs. Not quite sure how, but thankfully the Chiefs pulled that off. And then, unfortunately, Florida has this thing that's called the choke of the doke. I haven't come up with a cool name for this game, but the choke in Las Vegas by New Orleans was, that was rough to watch. And then, the other game I was actually fairly fascinated with, and this is someone that you're super high on, and I am too, was the New England and Seattle game. We're both, of course, super big fans of Russell Wilson, and we're definitely proponents of him getting the recognition that dude just doesn't normally get for his tenacity on the field. But on the other side of the token, another person that I want to talk about in that game is actually Cam Newton. He went 30 for 44, 397 yards, a touchdown and an interception. And this is a guy that is on the bare minimum. I think it's like $750,000 contract or whatever it is. And he's literally has everything to prove and everything to gain. And I'm happy to see him excel. He was a former Gator that did transfer. The man won himself a national title at Auburn. The man took the Panthers into a Super Bowl. Yeah, it wasn't a pretty sight, but, well, he got there, and I think that's the important factor. I'm happy to see Cam Newton excelling. I think he's another one like Russell Wilson. Russell gets just doubted because I don't think anyone could give me a reason why they don't like Russell Wilson. With Cam Newton, I think his attitude and his persona has been his own enemy, like a Randy Moss or a Terrell Owens, but not into that esque thing. He's almost like I equivalent Cam Newton to Dennis Rodman of the NFL. He's such a talented player, but I just think he's misunderstood, and mentally he is his own worst enemy. And we covered it a lot during when that Michael Jordan documentary was on about Dennis Rodman's mental state in a lot of situations. And not that I'm making light or joke of it or whatever, because mental health is a serious thing. But I think Cam Newton was his own worst enemy for so long. And I think maybe Carolina, and I hate using this term because I sound like a typical liberal millennial. It was just a toxic environment for him. And he got out of that, and and not that Ron Rivera was a bad coach. I think Ron Rivera is a great coach, but I think Bill Belichick has the discipline instilling capability that Phil Jackson had with Dennis Rodman. Is that sometimes you just need that iron fist to hold you down and hold you accountable. And I think we're going to see a new Cam Newton this season. He has the intelligence of an elder athlete in the NFL and as a starting quarterback with experience, but he's also, I think, going to have that tenacity and that drive that he did when he first broke out into the NFL. And then, for as far as the Raiders and the Saints game, I got a lot of questions on that. Is Drew Brees finally showing his age? Is Michael Thomas that much of an asset to the team? Were the Raiders just that hungry? Is John Gruden trying to hold on to his job? Find out tomorrow on next episode of Dragon Ball Z. There's so many questions that I have. I watched the game, and I sat there and I just I honestly started talking to myself, and I'm like, how the fuck is this even happening? I'm like, how are the Raiders right now? This is a team that you and I mean, the only thing we didn't do is go to John Gruden's house, take a shit on his front porch, and light it on fire. Let's just be honest with each other right now.
Well,
we were harsh on them.
It's still possible that can happen.
It's still on the table, but Derek Carr came out. He looked strong. A lot better than Drew Brees did. I'm gonna be honest with you. The kid he went 28 for 38, 284 yards, 3 touchdowns. Stud muffin. And then, Darren Waller. That's the Darren Waller I know right there. That's the dude that bailed me out of some situations in previous fantasy years. That was a very puzzling game to watch. Other than that, your usual suspects won and lost. Washington lost. Miami lost. Detroit lost. The Vikings lost. Jacksonville lost. You got your usual suspects, but all in all, it was a pretty good week. But with the injuries, though, I'm gonna circle back to that on the fantasy football portion of it, because there are definitely some issues right now that I think that we're all gonna be in a jam for. So what did you think? I know you said you wanted to really take the dagger to Dan Quinn, very Julius Caesar-esque.
Yeah. Guess who's Brutus in that situation?
Yeah, my man LaDarius about ready to start stabbing some motherfuckers.
Yeah. How did you get the size of that toga? You don't worry about that. I went to the toga big and tall north of Rome. But, I want to cover some of the games. And you talked about the Pats Seahawks game. I watched that, pretty much beginning to end. And you talked about Cam Newton, Chris. Cam Newton, and I want to go back to the point you made about Chris. I don't necessarily think that Carolina was toxic. I just think that the situation of Carolina, I just think it was expectations. I think that the expectations it was all in on Cam. Like before Christian McCaffrey, it was all about Cam Newton and the pressure. And in many ways, trying to be himself was difficult. And you got to understand the market of Charlotte. I'm not defending Cam Newton, but in that regard, like I say, I may have disagreements with him about, his accuracy, but he proved me wrong Sunday night. Listen, Bill Belichick is going to make Cam Newton. This is probably, and I don't want to use hyperbole. I may put this as the snippet to preview the episode to send out to social media, but I'll say it. This is probably the most talented quarterback Bill Belichick has ever had. The most talented.
You already know that you already know how I feel about Brady.
And I'll explain. He's athletic. People don't understand. Cam Newton was an MVP in this league, just like another guy I'm going to talk about, down the road. We tend to forget that Cam Newton is gifted. This guy, his size, his mobility, he's improved his passing, and it's going to only get better. Listen, people say, what about Tom Brady? I'm not saying Tom Brady's not talented. When Tom Brady first got in the league, you threw a bucket of water, a gust of wind would have blew Tom Brady all the way down to probably here, probably down to Miami. That's how skinny he was. That's how he wasn't the most athletic guy in Michigan. When Cam Newton got drafted, that guy was all about athleticism. He was super athletic. And so, and I think, and I double down and say that this is the most talented quarterback that Bill Belichick has ever had on his roster. And watch, I'm going to get like, oh, what about Brady? Like, you know how Chris, was sometimes people misread what you're saying. You see it a lot in the news, where it's like, I'm not saying that Tom Brady is not, the GOAT. No. My point is simply this: Tom Brady, when he first got out of college, was not known for athleticism. He wasn't the most talented guy in the world. Now, through hard work, determination, motivation, he became the GOAT. My point is that Cam Newton, from the minute he stepped foot on a football field, he was talented. He was athletic. And now he's in New England, where you could use this guy in many formations. Like, Chris, you very rarely saw like Tom Brady scramble up the pocket. I think if you raced a tortoise and Tom Brady, I put money on the
turtle
tortoise.
Might actually have a chance in hell.
Right. The tortoise may actually win the race. So I think Cam Newton gets knocked for that a lot. But here's the thing with Cam Newton. That was his 8th career game, Chris. We had 2 rushing touchdowns. That's an NFL record for a quarterback. It's an NFL record. And me, and I love numbers. Here's one that I felt interesting. Do you know Cam Newton's record for Carolina and now? When Cam Newton throws the ball over 300 yards, you know what his record is when that happens, the team record?
Probably close to undefeated.
8-13.
Oh, all right, just kidding.
Yeah.
All right, even I'm wrong every once in a while. Mark that down. I was actually wrong on a guess.
Oh, don't worry. I have permanent ink. It's already written, but I use permanent markers. Ouch. But okay, erasable. But he's 8-13. Now, when he throws under 300 yards, Chris, he's 62, 45, and 1. Now,
I like it.
And my point is that Cam Newton, he's not a guy to throw over 300 yards. That's not his MO. But, circumstances going with the running game, beyond his control. And if they get a running game, you may see Cam be Cam. But I want to go back and I want to talk about Russell Wilson, because you're going to hear Russell Wilson's name later as well. Like, here's what Russell Wilson did. 21 of 28, 288 yards, 5 touchdowns and interception. Chris, he threw a touchdown pass to 5 different receivers. 5.
Jesus.
and once again, I call him the MacGyver quarterback, because paperclip, bubblegum, and string. And he threw to Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, David Moore, who, by the way, that particular touchdown, according to Next Gen Stats, that chance of being a touchdown was 6.5%. That's the best, the lowest probability of a touchdown pass all season. It's just week 2, but he's, Russ is Russ, and he squeezed it in. Freddie Swain, our guy from Florida,
go Gators,
and the running back Chris Carson. And I believe they're going to open up the playbook more in Seattle. I think they're realizing, Russ has been in the league, 8 years, and you're realizing how to open up the playbook. Like, I find that ridiculous. But, here we are. They're going to open up the playbook more, in my opinion, to that. And that Patriots defense, Chris, look, all last season they allowed 4 touchdowns by wide receivers. They allowed that just in this game alone. So, and mind you, they don't have Patrick Chung. A lot of pieces aren't there. But this Pats defense, like this game was defense optional. But I like the game. 2 great quarterbacks. I think you had 2 great coaches as well. And more importantly, Chris, I think you saw a game that, as for Russell Wilson, I think now he should get some MVP votes. How can this man, he's won a Super Bowl. It's like one of ESPN 30 for 30. It's like, what if I told you that Russell Wilson does not have an MVP vote? He's never got one.
It's insane. I don't know how.
It blows my mind. And I'm like, he's won an MVP. He's been in the Super Bowl, no MVP votes. Great. Terrific. But enough of that rant. The Chiefs-Chargers game, Chris, that game could have went either way. And like Justin Herbert, he got the start because somehow the Chargers medical staff can't do the one thing that they're supposed to do. Like Tyrod Taylor got hurt in pregame because the doctor was trying to
put that, yeah, about
and I'm like, lung out. And it's like hashtag you had one job, literally. Make sure that our starting quarterback can play.
Doesn't have a punctured lung.
Right. Like literally, that's, listen, I don't know if that's in the Hippocratic Oath, but it should be. Like, you shouldn't, I believe it's in, do harm to none, I believe it's somewhere in the Hippocratic Oath. Yeah, I believe it's in there. Like I said, I'm not a doctor, but I'm pretty sure it's in there. But then when Justin Herbert comes out, and look, 22 of 33, 311 yards passing. He threw for 300 yards, and he had a rush TD. Only Cam and Otto Graham are the only quarterbacks to do that. So, this is what I say about the Chiefs. And I have a couple of stats about the Chiefs. Not going to give you those statistical stats, but like Harrison Butker you could argue is probably maybe one of the top 3 kickers in the league. He tied the team record for the longest field goal, 58 yards. He became the second kicker to make a pair of 58-yard field goals in the same game.
Stud, yeah, I saw that.
And you're like, you can't find a flaw on this team.
Like, yeah, even when your kicker is banging heads, you got yourself a good team.
Yeah, it's like find a flaw. Like their punter. Listen, I think it's Tommy Townsend. Yeah, so there's no real flaws. And I'm not gonna get into the Mahomes. Here's the thing with Patrick Mahomes. 27, 47, 32 years. Typical day at the office. Oh, by the way, he led the Chiefs in rushing, 54 yards. But here's the thing, Chris. Mahomes, he's won 6 straight games. This is important. Trailing by double digits, including the playoffs. That's an NFL record for a quarterback, according to the Live Sports Bureau. And for the Chiefs as a whole, Chris, they've won 11 straight games. Here's the thing, Chris. 4 of their last 5, they had to rally from double-digit deficits. That, to me, it shows 2 things. A, hey, great, they're resilient, but, man, they're losing out of the gate. And all it takes, and the opponent they're going to have this week, you can't afford to do that. You can't. They're playing the Ravens. You can't afford to get out of the gate and expect to come back. So, and also for the Chargers, listen, like I said, as far as the whole Justin Herbert thing goes, Chris, I've always believed that you shouldn't lose your job to injury. I've always believed that. People are like, well, what about Brady and like cha-cha? Tyrod Taylor didn't stick a needle and hurt him and puncture his own lung. All right.
Yeah, that's just
Doogie Howser could have did that. All right. Doogie Howser knows how to at least not try to do harm, literally, to your own player. It's like, Tyrod, I'm not going to say screw job, but he's going to be out indefinitely. And then the league said they're investigating it. Like, who do you think did it? Justin Herbert? Like, where's the investigation? Like, yeah, like, this is not like a Scooby Doo thing where we're trying to find Old Man Jenkins. We know who did it. What are we investigating? That Herbert paid off the team doctor to injure Tyrod? Is that it? Is that what we're trying to investigate here? I don't know. I mean, I'm just spitballing on that, but it's just ridiculous. Like, there's no need for investigation. This thing, we don't need the Warren Commission on this. But I want to talk about the Giants and the Bears game, and I think I'll let you talk about the Saquon Barkley injury. But like Daniel Jones, under the circumstances, Chris, he had 25 of 40, 241 yards. He had an interception. I think, Chris, I feel bad for Danny Dimes for this reason. I think not him, a young quarterback's best friend is a running back.
Absolutely. And when you lose that quarterback right in the beginning, or that running back in the beginning of the game, that hurts.
Yeah, and it was an uphill climb. Like, listen, the Giants made it a football game. Let's be clear, because they were playing the Bears, so obviously, room for error. But so, but when you look at Trubisky, and I keep trying to tell people, look, this Bears team didn't score a single point in the second half, and they still won 17-13. They were up 17-0 at the half, Chris. No Saquon Barkley. You could have put, we keep talking about daggers on this show for some reason, but we like our weapons. But you could have put the dagger in that team, but you didn't, because it's the Bears. And Mitchell Trubisky, let me clear my throat for these great stats here. 18 of 28, 190 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions.
Yeah, I was going to say he split decision himself right there.
Yeah, he did. Someone should have knocked him out. But anyway, I mean, like in the UFC, don't send letters. But here's the one stat, Chris, that I think you're going to interesting. Did you know that, listen, Trubisky is 4-1 when he throws the ball less than 200 yards and throws 2 or more interceptions? They're 4-1.
It's called good defense.
Yeah, it's like there's no way about it. Like, you thought the bailout, bailout the auto industry was the biggest bailout. No, it's the Bears defense is the biggest bailout. They bail out Trubisky. Imagine if this was like you bailing out your best friend, you're spending millions of bucks to do it. That's the Chicago Bears. That's why Nick Foles is there when they could have got Cam Newton. I'm just throwing that out there too. But that's why you traded a 4th-round pick to get Nick Foles. Because Trubisky's still not the answer. And people are like, oh, the Bears are 2-0. Okay, let me explain how they got 2-0, Chris. The Lions were the Lions. I'll put it this way. I'll use a baseball term. Just we haven't talked about baseball on the show. Chris, the Lions had a 5-run lead in the top of the 9th. And all of a sudden, they forgot how to pitch. That's what happened. They forgot. They forgot they had to get 3 more outs. And by the time the scoreboard, it was already over. And at the end of the day, that's how they got their first win. This win here, if a healthy Saquon, the Giants win this football game. But unfortunately, he went down with the ACL injury. And you didn't score points in the second half, and you still win by 4. That's if you're betting, Vegas, if you're betting in Vegas, that really angered you. Like, I don't think they even covered. That's how angry people should be. Like, listen, my Cubs are the best thing in town. Oh, and the White Sox too. Don't send me letters. Oh, what about the White Sox? Who's the host of this show? Think about that before you respond back. Me and Chris control the content on this show. So why don't we talk about the Mets? I think you know why. So listen, call us biased or just call us honest. We prefer honest. But another game I want to talk about, Chris, is the Lions and the Packers. Now, I know I was high on the Lions, but we're going to pretend like we're going to Men in Black this. We're going to put a light to everyone's face, and you all forget what I said. Just forget what I said. Didn't happen. It didn't happen.
Well, wasn't this one of those teams that I said that don't expect much from?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you sure did, Chris. But counterpoint, who did you say was going to win the NFC North, Chris?
Go to hell in a fucking handbasket, man.
As long as it's not a wicker basket, I don't want to burn my hand.
It's wicker.
Yeah, you know Wicker burns, fans. I think Nicolas Cage in The Wicker Man. He burned. Anyway, we're sidetracking. But here's the thing about the Lions. I'm gonna roast them, Chris. They're the first team in NFL history to blow double-digit leads to lose 4 straight games. It's not the fact that they lose, Chris. They have at least a 10-point lead, and they blow it. And on top of that, Chris, they've lost 11 straight games. And Matt Patricia, if it wasn't for, that guy, whose name rhymes with Latham Lace and Bland Ben, Matt Patricia is just on a hot seat himself. Nobody's talking about that. Because, listen, Matt Stafford's doing all that he can, but that defense is like, they lost their corners. But that's not an excuse. They had a lead in this game. You had a lead on the road against Green Bay, and you blew it. No excuses there. None. And it's for Green Bay, Aaron Jones, someone I think who you like, for obvious reasons, that we'll probably discuss down the road. Chris, he had 18 carries, 168 yards, 2 touchdowns. Also, 4 receptions and 68 yards for a touchdown. He had a 75-yard touchdown run. That's the longest run Green Bay's had since Ahmad Green did against the Cowboys back in 2004.
Jesus.
And then, listen, the Packers are the 8th team in the Super Bowl era to score 40 or more points in the first 2 games of the season. Remember, somebody on this show believed in Green Bay.
Dude, you were pushing my buttons today.
What you pushing? How far? I push your buttons. This is a rarity, folks. I push. Well, listen. You push mine about the Lions, like somebody on the show. So we're just pushing each other's buttons. In fact, I say we invest in a Switch because we're going to run out of buttons. So we'll bring it up in our next budget meeting. So I think we just go to switches. All right, fine.
Next quarter.
Yeah, next quarter, like a little turn knobs. But anyway. But Green Bay, and I think Matt LaFleur, and I said it last week, Matt LaFleur is letting Aaron Rodgers be Aaron Rodgers. There's just certain guys in this league who they're not predicated by a system. And I think you brought it up last week. Tom Brady, for all the greatness that he has, was a system quarterback. And nobody wants to admit that. But the reality is he was, because he was pretty much under the same system.
I like
Aaron Rodgers. But Aaron Rodgers just lets, he rolls out and he does his thing. Aaron Rodgers is, like I say, talented guy. More talented than Brady. I say, Darius, you're bragging on Brady. Look up the word talent and athletic and do you see Brady's face in the Merriam-Webster dictionary? Then you can tweet me or inbox me that. Because here's the thing. Aaron Rodgers is going to be a healthy Aaron Rodgers, and this team is a Super Bowl team. They're putting up 40 points a game. The defense, and they didn't have one of their best defensive players, Kenny Clark, on the defensive line, because the big injury bugs are going around. So Chris, I tell people buy stock in Green Bay. Buy stock in Green Bay because what's going on is that division, and people look, what about the Bears? And you know what I tell them? I walk away from their face. But the point is to avoid criminal action. But the point is, Chris, is that Green Bay is one of those teams where I just say, look, they're very. When you look at the division, like look what happened with Minnesota on the road. Kirk Cousins had 3 interceptions. You know, bouncing back against a very good Colts defense. Listen, the impact of Stefon Diggs. Like, listen, Stefon Diggs this week. Listen, Stefon Diggs had 8 receptions, 3 yards
Stud.
For Buffalo, and
Stud. Well, I told you what did I say? When we talked about doing fantasy drafts and all that, is that he is a low buy, high value target.
Yeah.
Look in our draft. I picked him up later in the draft, and the dude's gotten me 25 plus points per game thus far. I mean, he almost got me 40 points this week alone.
Yeah.
And the thing with Stefon Diggs, I think the problem was Diggs is one of those guys that he needs to have like the attention. He needs to be the center of the show. He wasn't the center of the show in Minnesota. You had Adam Thielen, who, I've been ride or die with him. Unfortunately, I couldn't scoop him this season in fantasy. He's the centerpiece of the passing offense. I think we can all agree on that.
Mm-hmm.
You have Dalvin Cook in the backfield with a slew of other running backs when he eventually goes down with a broken hamstring again, who can catch and run simultaneously and on opposite sides of the spectrum. And you also got Kevin Rudolph as a good safety blanket for a tight end who not only can block, but also, a lot of people fail to forget he's got a good set of hands on him. Not that, right now Kirk Cousins throwing interceptions like they're going out of style would help Diggs, but I think there were too many moving pieces, and going to Buffalo I think was almost therapeutic for him. Like we talked about with Cam Newton, that he's essentially the center of the offense now. I mean, granted, Devin Singletary has held it down in the backfield, but it's not like he's as explosive or dynamic as Dalvin Cook is when he's healthy. And then they had John Brown as a receiver, and their next best receiver was Cole Beasley. The dude looks like he belongs on the daggone Tiger King half the time, And that's all the Bills really had, and they did well with that. Now they've got a lethal weapon at receiver, and even though they're in my division, I was high on them, and I still am. I think I think they're going to be the new kings of the AFC for the next couple years until God knows what happens with the Jets. Miami, I think, will be Miami. I think their only real contender will be New England just because of the fire that Cam Newton has brought to that organization. Again, because of his athleticism. But yeah, I mean, I'm high on Diggs, man. I'm happy to see him doing well. Sorry to steal your thunder there.
No, it's fine. It's fine. But you bring up a great point, and I think Minnesota misses him because look, when I did the predictions, to me it's like you're in a relationship and it's over, but the other person doesn't, and nobody's telling Minnesota that this is kind of a low-key rebuild. It's not like a complete, taking the sledgehammer and knocking out drywall rebuild. I think it's a slow rebuild defensively. I think it's a slow build, getting rid of Stephon Diggs. Like you say, it was just more of the environment. He wanted to be the guy, and I get that. And I totally get that. But I think someone needs to tell Vikings fans that this is a rebuild. Because, there's a reason why you drafted Justin Jefferson in the first round. There's a reason why you drafted, a corner in the first. You're replacing the guys who the Vikings let go for the most part, for pecuniary reasons. So, but once again, but also the Colts are very good. Jonathan Taylor, like think about this, Chris. Like no OTAs, no preseason, and he's playing great. And like I say about the Colts, this team goes as far as Phillip Rivers doesn't Phillip Rivers the game. As long as the ball is not in Phillip Rivers' hands when it counts the most, the Colts could do some things. But speaking of doing things, or say not doing things, I don't know what's going on in Philly, but Carson, listen, either I'll put it this way: either the Rams' offense is that good, or the Eagles are like the late Denny Green said, they are not who we thought they were. And quite frankly, Chris, I think the Rams are that good because I don't want to admit that, but they re-signed, they got Jalen Ramsey, they re-signed Jalen Ramsey, they re-signed Jared Goff, they re-signed Robert Woods, they re-signed Cooper Kupp. Like Michael, they still got Aaron Donald. Like I'm not going to say they're going to win the division or anything like that, but I think they faced the Eagles team that, quite frankly, Chris, Carson Wentz. Like here's the thing with Carson Wentz, Chris. Just the last 2 games, he has 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and a fumble. And the NFC East is quite possibly, and I once again may catch flack for saying it.
It's the dumpster fire of the NFL.
It's the worst division in football. Like Chris, did anyone have Washington having more wins? Did anybody have Washington? Listen, they lost, but listen, did anybody have Washington having one more win than the Eagles? Or put it this way, looking a little bit better than the Eagles? Because listen, even with Washington losing to Arizona the week, they didn't look terrible. They just faced a very talented Arizona team. Like Chris, this division is bad. It's bad. It's basically choosing between, like you're growing up as a kid, between asparagus, Brussels sprouts, beets, and mush. Like you take your pick of which is which. Like it's what you want to eat the most. The least favorite foods that you want to eat the most. And like I said, I still feel in my heart, Chris, that the Eagles can still win this division. They can. I think the Eagles are still they like I said, the Cowboys are there. Listen, I think the Giants know Saquon. I think they're kind of out of it by proxy. But listen, I give credit to Jared Goff. He completed his first 13 passes, 2 of which went to Tyler Higbee, and they're pretty good. And the cut, they're pretty. They're not like. So go ahead. You were saying?
Yeah, the most important thing. You look at this. You look at the end result of the game. LA 37, Philadelphia 19.
Mm-hmm.
Jared Goff, 20 for 27, 267 yards, 3 touchdowns. Carson Wentz, 26 for 43, 242 with 2 interceptions. You can't win games by turning the ball over. And the faster Philadelphia figures that out, the better off I think they'll be. That was their problem the week before with Washington out of all teams. Now, we lined up when we did our picks. I think we even laughed at this game, and we're like, Washington's so terrible, their team doesn't even have a name. And Philadelphia is just going to smoke check them. And then I think at like halftime, we were texting each other like, dude, what bizarro world are we in? I'm wondering if Flashpoint's a real thing. Like maybe there really is like a secret society of superheroes, and maybe they just haven't come to our dimension yet. But them altering the timeline has somehow affected us. And somehow Washington was able to beat Philadelphia, not just beat them, but just pummel them into just utter submission. And LA did the same thing. I watched, I think it was like the third quarter of the game. And it was terrible.
I mean, Philadelphia, they just don't look prepared. It's one thing if injuries are going to happen. I think we talked about that with the lack of preseason and training camp and conditioning. Injuries were prone. And I think subconsciously we all expect it. I don't expect people not to be mentally prepared. If just because you can't run plays, on a field doesn't mean you can't watch film or do the other aspects of mental preparation for this game.
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia honestly, I've legit, I've seen high school teams that came more prepared for a game. They were just all over the place. I mean, I know I'm on this big, let's shit on Philadelphia tangent, and I'm a half hour from the stadium, so I'm sure my apartment will probably be set on fire soon. But it's just they're terrible, and even the fan base up here, all my friends up here naturally are Eagles fans. They're super close to the stadium. This is their market, this is their share. Even the fans are like, how terrible can this organization get? And if Philadelphia could easily win the NFC East, easily, but playing like this, you're going to see the Cowboys walk away with this division.
Oh, good Lord. Don't ever say that.
And it kills me to say that, but like you said, by proxy, I don't think Daniel Jones can carry a team into the playoffs. I don't think, not yet.
No.
I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just saying he can't do it yet.
Yeah. He doesn't have the pieces now. No.
Or if he does, he's going to look like a younger LeBron, well, even an older LeBron, because he still gets embarrassed more times than not when he goes there, because LeBron's garbage in the postseason. Anyways, hey, how many rings has he got? Way less than Jordan. Take a seat, and Kobe. But definitely Daniel Jones isn't carrying the Giants into the postseason. The the Washington football team, they're not. They're trying. Riverboat Ron is trying to float that little rat vessel down the river. I don't think that they're going to do it. But you know what? Stranger things have happened. So honestly, Dallas can legit make if they play like. And again, I'm not picking on your Falcons because I know you want to take a big old heaping steaming turd on them.
Yeah, you already are. Go ahead.
If the Cowboys play like they did last week, if they don't make the playoffs, I'd be shocked. I mean, literally the entire NFC is going down on the ground and tapping, and they're not. But it's the Cowboys, so they'll find a way to screw this up nonetheless. But there's no reason they shouldn't be in the playoffs. The Eagles are just that ridiculous out of alignment. Something needs to happen. I don't know what, but number one, sticking with Carson Wentz, I think, was one of the biggest mistakes they made. I think they should have stayed with Nick Foles.
Ooh.
And you know how I feel about Carson Wentz. He's not good. He's not. Show me what you can't throw 2 interceptions and win a game unless if you're throwing 4 touchdowns to counterbalance it. And instead, he threw 0 touchdowns.
No, go ahead.
But yeah, I mean that. Like I said, I can rant on these guys all day. The Eagles, they got a washed up receiver in Deshaun Jackson. I'm not saying he's bad. He's just old. The dude is archaic. Zach Ertz, I mean they're barely using him. Goater they barely used. And they've got Boston Scott and Miles Sanders in the backfield. I mean, granted, Sanders almost cracked 100 yards. He did get a touchdown, but I mean, I don't understand what else. It's just sometimes you just need to throw the whole thing away and start over again. I think that's what they need to do to Carson Wentz. Crumple him up, throw him in the trash receptacle, leave the wrist up like Kobe, scream Kobe after you make it, and start again. So that's my rant.
Okay. Yeah, before we get to your fantasy start and sit 'em, I want to go back to your point about Carson Wentz. I defend Carson Wentz by saying this. This is important, when he's healthy, Chris, because remember, he was an MVP candidate before he got hurt. Like, people tend to forget that. He got hurt. The last, 5 games of the year he didn't play. But he was already an MVP candidate at that point if he just would have stayed healthy. I think to throw it away, Chris, is a stretch because we got to understand. I understand when people say go with Nick Foles. I get that. But what I also argue is the fact of the matter is, and it didn't work out in Jacksonville, but Nick Foles just wasn't going to be the long-term guy. Because was Nick Foles worth the money? Because think of it this way, Chris. Would you have paid Nick Foles the same type of money that, say, Ryan Tannehill's getting now?
Because part of me, I say yes, because he did win a Super Bowl. That accounts for a lot.
Okay, it does. And listen, I'm not going to argue, but you know who has Super Bowls too? Brad Johnson, Trent Dilfer, Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco got paid, Chris, and Joe Flacco has never been the same quarterback. My point is that I understand why people. I'm not knocking Nick Foles. He's a good man. He's a good dude. But the point I'm conjecturing, Chris, is that there's a reason why the Eagles drafted Carson Wentz number 2 overall. Ironically, Jared Goff being number 1 overall. There's a reason why. And I understand that people say, go with Nick Foles. But, Chris, I always look at it from an investment point of view. They've invested a lot in Carson Wentz. They really didn't invest a lot in Nick Foles. And, Nick Foles left. He got money in Jacksonville, got hurt. Now he's, one Trubisky, a couple Trubisky screw-up games away from being the starter in Chicago. So, but you just don't throw away a second overall pick like Carson Wentz unless you're sure he's done. And I just don't think he's done. Has he played great? No. No. Like I say, 2 touchdowns. Listen, 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and a fumble in his first 2 games. That's not great, Chris. But when you look at this division, Carson Wentz could easily, and I said it once and I'll say it again, when healthy, Carson Wentz is a better quarterback than Dak Prescott. Why? Because Carson Wentz can somehow do more with less. Think about this. That Eagles team you talked about, Chris, beat that Cowboys team with Zach Ertz got hurt. They were down to a Greg Ward, who was a quarterback converted to wide receiver, and a couple of paper clips and paper mache pinatas. And that Eagles team beat the Dallas Cowboys. Why? Because I trust the coach. I trust the staff. And it's like, the Aaron Rodgers, I tell people, just relax. Like, listen, at the end of the day, Chris, I get your point, and I'm not going to say you're wrong. But my point is that the Eagles, to me, said, well, we can't pay 2 quarterbacks. They said that. I'm not in the meetings, but I'm pretty sure they said that. They thought that Foles was expendable, and in a way, Chris, they were kind of right. But in a way, they were right for the wrong reasons. That, unfortunately, Nick Foles got hurt, and Jacksonville just let him go. Jacksonville didn't bother to, wait till he got healthy. And because they went with Gardner Minshew. My point, Chris, is that if the Jacksonville Jaguars says you're not worth hanging around until you get healthy, because mind you, Chris, if I recall correctly, he still could have played that season. He wasn't he was on IR until week 11, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So he still could have played, but Jacksonville said we're going to trade him to Chicago. That's why I feel Philly did the right thing. Because if the Jacksonville Jaguars, the same organization who got Blake Bortles, if they said that Nick Foles was not worth holding on to until, he got healthy for Minshew, then they traded him. That's how Jacksonville valued him. Jacksonville didn't even value him as a starter for him to wait to get healthy. That's just like, listen, Tyrod Taylor's hurt, Chris, but the Chargers are not going to trade Tyrod Taylor. You see the point I'm getting at?
I see where you're going with it.
It's like if you believe in him, like I put it this way, even when Drew Bledsoe got hurt and Brady took over, they didn't trade Bledsoe till like a season or two after that. They didn't trade him like, okay, we got to get rid of him next season. No, they didn't, because he still had value. And my point is that Nick Foles had value, but just as a back. Look at Case Keenum. Case Keenum is backing up Baker Mayfield, and Case Keenum threw the game-winning pass, ironically, to Stefon Diggs to beat the Saints in the playoffs. So where's Case Keenum? Backing up Baker Mayfield in Cleveland. It easily could have been, they could have easily paid Case Keenum and not went after Kirk Cousins. Like, I didn't mean to go on this rant, but because there's another rant down the road. But I'll save that rant for a future time. But the point is this, Chris. I believe when you invest in someone, it's like you work at a company. Like, think of it this way. I'm sure your company invests money. Like, obviously you pay them, but you invest a lot in your employees. So you want to make sure that they're absolutely in the best position to do their best work, or to make sure that they get it. Because if you have to come down to a decision to get rid of them, you don't want to be like, okay, we can, like, if it's some guy, Chris, that you hired off the street, like, he's maybe not as expendable as the guy that maybe you put time and effort into. Like, because some employees, I believe, certain companies invest more into them more than others. That's not playing favoritism, but it's the fact that they were willing to go out and get them and pay them high quality. So you're going to take a little bit more time with them, if that makes any sense.
No, it does.
So, I'm like I say, I'm not saying Nick Foles is a great quarterback, but I will defend the Eagles by their retaining Carson Wentz, because you know why? They went and drafted Jalen Hurts. So now you're in a situation where, listen, you got somebody younger, and look, if by chance they screw it up, Chris, listen, if Carson Wentz doesn't get it done, you got Jalen Hurts. Then that's your future. Nick Foles wasn't the future. That's the reality. Nick Foles, just like in Chicago, Nick Foles would be the short-term answer to a long-term problem. But speaking of short-term and long-term, let's go to your fantasy stardom and sit them, because there's a lot of injuries that are definitely long-term, and people want to know who to start and sit, Chris. So I'll let you take it away.
Look, man, in the words of Tom Hanks, Houston, we've got a problem. There were a lot of key injuries this week. Unfortunately, I fell victim to one of them with Christian McCaffrey going down for a few weeks. A lot of the notable ones, Saquon Barkley. I know Devontae Adams was banged up. We really haven't had too much on him. Jimmy G is banged up. The entire 49ers defense, I think, died on Sunday, from what I heard. There are a lot of things. So I'm going to run through, just like I normally do, your quarterback wideouts, running backs, and tight ends of strong sits and starts and things like that, your DFS bargains. So starting at quarterbacks, luckily we weren't too attacked on them, but your strong starts are, of course, going to be Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Matt Ryan. Kind of your go-tos. Now, if you will really, really want to have an advantage, if these guys are available on the wire, or if they're maybe you can make a trade for it. Maybe even if you got them on the bench, you might want to plug them in. Cam Newton going to Las Vegas. I think that the Raiders still don't have a lot of downfield capabilities. I think Drew Brees was just all over the place. I think he hopefully was just having a bad night. But I think that this is honestly going to be his best matchup so far this season. I mean, granted, it's only week 3, but I think he should be able to do a lot of damage, not only on passing, but the Raiders last season had an issue with containing mobile quarterbacks. And we all know that Cam Newton's got a set of Michelin's on him. That boy can peel if he needs to. Another one, you're real high on him, and I'm even starting to take some more faith and belief into him. Is the Packers with Aaron Rodgers going to New Orleans? If Derek Carr can pick apart that defense, well, we already know what Aaron Rodgers can do. Another very strong start. Big Ben going to Houston. Houston's as well. It's Houston. As long as he can stay healthy and his, with Juju and all of his weapons staying healthy, he has a very high floor against Houston. I think. On the flip side of the coin, Green Bay has let a lot of let teams put some points on him. So I think Drew Brees, even though he was a little underwhelming this week, I think he's going to have a bounce back week. I really expect Emmanuel Sanders to get significantly more involved this week. He just really didn't find his home yet. Smith took a lot of that, but I think that he'll definitely Brees will have some good time out there. A surprising one guy we really don't talk about is the byproduct of pregnancy in a frat house, and that's Gardner Minshew. That little stud, porn stash and all, I think is going to be gunslinging some serious power down in Miami. Miami's defense as well. Jacksonville's offense hasn't looked terrible either. But I think Gardner, if you have him or if he's on the wire and you got a sketch quarterback, do yourself a favor, go get him. Another one, people are going to feel like this is a trap, but hear me out. As much as I hate saying it, Tom Brady.
Good night, everybody.
I know. You heard it here first, ladies. Denver's pass defense is sputtering like a 92 Ford Focus, or not Ford Escort. That's what it was at the time. That Ford Escort that's like missing a head gasket and like one of the cylinders not ready to pop up. That's essentially Denver's secondary right now. I expect Tom Brady just to completely disintegrate it. He's got Godwin coming back, Mike Evans out there, Gronk out there, OJ Howard out there, and then Fournette and Rojo in the back. Scary. But we'll see what happens. So another one one that I have on the DFS bargains for DraftKings and FanDuel is, and I know you're going to want to punch me in the throat for this, is Mitchell Trubisky this week. He's a really low buy in both leagues.
There's a reason for that.
I know, because they're playing Atlanta, and Atlanta's secondary is looking suspect. Very suspect.
Don't you need to hire an attorney for all this slander?
Nah, I think it's slander if it's true, though, man. That's the difference. There's legal merit here, my man.
Yeah. I'll see you in court.
Another deep streamer, if you really like rolling the dice, Fitzmagic. Jacksonville has two modes, really good or really, really terrible. It's up to them which one they choose. On the weaker side of the quarterbacks, ones that you should stay away from, Deshaun Watson, Carson Wentz, Matthew Stafford, Daniel Jones, Jared Goff, Joe Burrow. Even though that the Eagles are just completely disheveled, he is a rookie quarterback with limited options. So I think the Eagles might use them as a punching bag. A deep trap that I have is Phillip Rivers. And the reason why I got him as a deep trap, or also like a deep, a deep start, is two things are going to happen. The Jets are going to finally snap out of whatever issue they got going on, and they're going to really start playing some defense. Or Phillip Rivers is going to do what Phillip Rivers does and throw like 17,000 interceptions. Both of which are not good for the city of Indianapolis. However, if Phillip Rivers can channel his inner Phillip Rivers against a New York defense that makes Todd Bowles happy that he's no longer part of that organization, I think that we are in a situation where that could go really good or really, really bad. Hence why I'm calling it the deep trap. Um, on the running back side, of course, minus the ones that are hurt, your regular starters, Zeke, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Nick Chubb, Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs, Austin Eckler, Kenyon Drake, Chris Carson, blah, 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 blah. If you don't know these ones by now, just go ahead, delete the app off your phone or in your computer and stop what you're doing. Some of the stronger starts that we're going to have on the running back side is going to be, again, I feel like I'm just banging on you today. Is David Montgomery going to Atlanta? Atlanta just defensively, they're having some issues that really need themselves figured out. Again, I'm not picking on him, but let's be honest about it. A package deal that I have, I normally don't do buy one get ones outside of Publix, but a buy one get one that I have is Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb going to Washington. I think that Baker Mayfield is going to exploit their youth in Washington, and I think that Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb both have the on-field experience and leadership and physical capability to really do some damage against a Washington football team. Rough situation right now. Another strong start I have is Leonard Fournette with the Bucs going to Denver. I honestly see some good things happening with Fournette in that organization just because he's not the centerpiece of it. So the ball can get spread because, let's face it, he's not a multi-snap back. But the Broncos couldn't stop Derrick Henry or James Conner. And I think that Fournette is like a hybrid version of Henry and Conner. He's just as fast as Conner, but Fournette is just as physical as Derrick Henry is. But that's just a byproduct of an SEC running back. They're just like freight trains, man. They're like juggernauts. Another BOGO deal I have is Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins going to Kansas City. The run defense for Kansas City is not stellar. They're not big. They're not fast. I think that if they can get the ball moving early, I think that'll be a good situation from them. And then Myles Gaskin from Miami going to Jacksonville. If you're in a situation where you need a running back, here's your hints right here.
Is your throat okay?
Yes,
okay?
Yes, yeah, throat is okay. That's
Right.
me hinting the world that would be one of those boys that you want to go pick up. Or Sony Michel and James White from New England going to Las Vegas. The Raiders have a serious problem with power running and receiving backs. So if you got either one of them, hint, hint, or if you don't and they're on the wire, which more than likely all three of those dudes I just named are, hint, hint, go get them, Tiger. If you're doing the DraftKings, again, your DFS bargains, Mike Davis from the Panthers. This guy could actually be a sleeper. He's got really good hands. And with Christian McCaffrey being out a minimum 4 to 6 weeks, he's going to get a lot of on-field time. On-field time translates into experience and confidence. Both of those translate into some good potential in the NFL. Don't sleep on him. Don't overlook him. I got him also as a sleeper in non-DFS leagues. So if he's available, you might want to consider going and picking him up. Some of your weaker starts, if you got Melvin Gordon going to Tampa, versus Tampa, go ahead and put him on the bench. The Bucs' run defense is significantly better than you think. They essentially bottled Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara. Let that sink in. And Melvin Gordon is not either one of those dudes. David Johnson going to Pittsburgh. They don't call it the steel curtain for nothing. I don't see him doing well. And also the Texans are one small misfortune away from probably selling the whole team for a stack of like Pogs Pokemon cards and a hot dog cart. And not even like the cool Pogs that you would get like in the packs. I'm talking like the shitty ones you can get from like the flea market. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, those ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's essentially what the value of the Houston Texans players are to the GM and the head coach. Devin Singletary going to the Rams, bad idea. I just don't see it happening. The Rams got a good run defense. I don't see anything happening to them. Another one, if you got Ronald Jones from Tampa, I think Fournette is going to overpower him. So if you got him and Fournette's available, swap him, or just bench him for whatever other running back you have. I see AP not doing well. Well, A, because he belongs to the Lions, and B, Arizona, I think is going to be coming for blood, and I think they're going to try to build off their win last week. And then if you have Frank Gore, I don't know why you would, but if some godforsaken reason you have him on your league, just go ahead. In the words of Easy E, throw him in the gutter and go buy another. And then I'm just going to go ahead and put this out there now. If you literally have any Giants player, even though like half of San Francisco is injured, just bench all of your New York players for the Giants. I'm just going to, and the Jets, honestly. Let's not lie to each other. Just get rid of them all. Just throw them all away. So for wide receivers, of course, Devontae Adams, if he plays, that's that's a huge situation. Tyreek Hill, Julio Jones, he is at the very bottom of my list, but I got him set up alphabetically by team. But he's on my naughty list. Calvin Ridley, Stud Muffin, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin. Kenny Galladay, DeAndre Hopkins, Allen Robinson, Juju Smith, A.J. Brown, Adam Thielen, Julian Edelman, Stephon Diggs, just the whole thing. You know where I'm going with this. Some of your stronger starts, CeeDee Lamb from the Cowboys. I don't know what it is, but I mean, that boy's coming out strong. Seattle's pass defense, I'm not 100% sold on. It's not the 12th man like it used to be. I'm not saying it's terrible, but I really see CD having a great game because they're going to put so much focus and emphasis on Amari Cooper this week that I think that CD Lamb is going to benefit from this. Again, speculation, who knows? Traquan Smith going to Green Bay, or excuse me, playing Green Bay. He definitely filled the role of Michael Thomas last week by leaps and bounds. Maybe question mark Emmanuel Sanders. I got him as one of my oddballs. Anthony Miller from the Bears. Again, like I said, I hate picking on Atlanta, but let's face it, secondary is questionable. I do have actually Deshaun Jackson, even though I was just sitting there shitting on the Eagles. I do have him actually as a strong start going to Cincinnati. He does score big play action. And let's face it, the Bengals cornerback and secondary are young. Deshaun Jackson might be old, but with age comes wisdom, and he should be able to shake and bake on all those Ricky Bobbies out there. Marquez Valdez-Scantling from the Packers. Again, I know you're high on the Packers. I think he's going to be a big playmaker, especially with Devontae Adams. I think regardless whether he plays or not, I think he's going to be a very big target just because they're going to cover Adams if he's on the field. Adams ain't going to be playing at 100%. MVS will just be out there waving his hands. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm trying to think of any other ones that are worth mentioning. Some of your DFS bargains, Corey Davis from Tennessee. Well, the Vikings secondary sucks. I'll just leave it at that. Corey Davis, I talked about him last week. He is cheap on DFS leagues. Jerry Jeudy from the Broncos. Even though that they're playing, Tampa, I think he does have some potential. He's got a good ceiling. I think that he'll get you points. Jeff Driscoll, with no Cortland Sutton, is going to be trying to dump that ball off as fast as humanly possible. And I think Jerry Jeudy is that person. And then also Michael Gallup from the Cowboys. I think he's overdue for those big plays. I think we might see something because, again, Seattle's defense has given up a lot of big shots in the secondary. Some of your deep sleepers are going to be, and again, this is 100%, rolling the dice on it. Keelan Cole from Jacksonville going to Miami. Michael Pittman Jr. from the Colts going to the Jets. Now, one guy that I'm super high on, and I haven't given him the attention that he deserves, is Robbie Anderson. And Robbie Anderson is one of those guys that it seems like like Stephon Diggs, that he was forgotten about. He got onto a new team, and it was odd. Like we talked about Diggs earlier, and I picked him up late in the draft. Everybody knew Stephon Diggs last year because of him being on the Vikings, and it's like he went to the Bills and people forgot about him, and I picked him up late. Well, this other cat that I picked up late in the draft, Robbie Anderson. I mean, he's literally ranked 12 right now in our Yahoo league for points. I mean, he's a top 20 player, and it's like everyone forgot about him. And I mean, granted, he is playing against the Chargers defense, which has allowed the second fewest yards per pass attempt, which I think it's like 5.9 or 6 or somewhere right around there. And they've only allowed 2 touchdowns through 2 games. But you got Teddy Two Glove Bridgewater out there that I think is going to get the receiver significantly more involved because of the absence of Christian McCaffrey. I mean, granted, they do have Davis, but I think Davis isn't going to get the checkdowns that McCaffrey will because of just the physicality of McCaffrey and the freak of nature that he is. DJ Moore, I think, will definitely draw coverage, and I think Robbie Anderson will have himself a hell of a game. So cough, cough. If you need a receiver, see if he's available, and if not, I'm sure someone will trade him to you for next to nothing. Your weaker starters, Marquise Brown from the Ravens going to Kansas City. I don't think KC's secondary is going to let any big pass pass defense go along. Marvin Jones Jr. going to Arizona. He did score last week, but really hasn't done much without Kenny Golladay. Marvin Jones Jr. is one of those dudes that he needs a big player with him. I look at him at like the way that Scottie Pippen was to Michael Jordan. Scottie Pippen was great, but he really needed Jordan to elevate him into that level. I think that's where Marvin Jones Jr. is. Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks, if you got them from the Texans and they're going to Pittsburgh, well, we already know how that's going to turn out. Again, Giants, if you have any Giants players, just stop it. Just stop. And then we'll just leave it at that. AJ Green, I have as a question mark. Again, I think that's a boom or bust. So exercise extreme caution with him. Last but not least, on the tight end side of the ball, of course, your go-tos, your Travis Kelce's, your Zach Ertz, Darren Waller's, Tyler Higbee's, Hunter Henry, George Kittle's, so on and so forth. If you don't start them, you're playing with a few cards short of a full deck. Some of your stronger starters, I think Jared Cook going to Green Bay. Green Bay just does not do well against tight ends for some reason. It's just like it's their kryptonite. I think that will be exposed here with Jared Cook once again. I think that, especially without Michael Thomas, Green Bay has a very aggressive defense. So checkdowns, short passes, and emergencies are going to be a thing for Drew Brees to be looking at. So we'll see Jared Cook get some action. However, I know I've been shitting on the Falcons most of this time. If you got Hayden Hurst, do yourself a favor, plug him in. Chicago is terrible. Terrible at midfield. Terrible, well, they're just terrible on defense in general for the most part, but they're extra shitty on tight end coverage. Actually, one of the worst in the league. So plug Hurst in if you got him. Another one, TJ Hawkinson from the Lions. He's been hot. With a young Arizona team, I don't think they're going to be able to contain that heat. We'll see what happens. Mike Gesicki from Miami, he exploded. He's doing this hybrid slot position. I really honestly don't know how to describe it, but he's been doing a lot of that, and I think that could come into play, I think, against Jacksonville. Both those teams are terrible, and both of them are hungry to do something. So we'll definitely see, some signs of light there. And then Noah Fant from Denver. I honestly think he's just going to be the go-to guy for Jeff Driscoll. The Broncos are in disarray right now. Tight ends are the quarterbacks like blankets were to Tommy Pickles and the Rugrats. You just
You just curl up and nuzzle with him, and everything's going to be okay. And I think that's how Jeff Driscoll is going to treat Noah Fant this week. So your bargain for your DFS leagues for DraftKings and FanDuel, Logan Thomas from Washington. He had 9 targets against the Cardinals, but he didn't necessarily hit payday yet. But the Browns, again, they're one of those teams that are also in the very bottom of the league on tight end coverage. He is available in most leagues. He is very, very cheap. Scoop him up if you need to. Your weaker starts, if you got Rob Gronkowski, go ahead and sit him. I think O.J. Howard's going to get a better situation. Again, Giants related. If you have Evan Ingram, I'm sorry. You wasted your time. If you have Chris Hendrick from the Jets, again, RIP. Jimmy Graham, for the Bears, as good as he is, the dude's held together, but he's one of those players that are made by MacGyver. It's like his ankle and knee are like put together by like 3 paper clips, a roll of duct tape, and like some chewing gum for cartilage. Jordan Akins from Houston, again, they're going to Pittsburgh. Bad idea. They will turn him into ketchup, all pun intended. Austin Hooper going to the Washington football team. Again, Hooper hasn't showed me much. Something needs to bend or break here. I don't know how. Something needs to. Let's get something going, or just get off the team. And that's really what I got for my stardom situms. There were a whole lot of injuries. Plan accordingly. I've seen in my league. I've seen some trade picks. I fell victim to it with McCaffrey. I did have to make a couple moves to keep myself relevant. Stay on top of it. Stay on top of your team. And the terrible thing is normally when injuries typically happen, it's like mid-season, and teams are already starting to figure out where they sit. Are they going to win? Are they going to lose? Should they start preparing for next year? Then you can start being a vulture and start circling around and getting draft picks and trading your team away for next year, or try to build your team up to push yourself into the playoffs, so on and so forth. So keep an eye on them. If you got any questions, hit us up on the Facebook and the Twitterverse. If it's on Twitter, LaDarius legit asks me, and then I tell him, and then he answers back because, I hate Twitter. But if you got questions on it or any more, or if you even got some of your own advice, maybe something I missed, man, hit us up on the old interwebs and social media.
Well, it's been a tough week, and I think injury wise, I know you made some moves in the league as well, and I'm looking to make. I think right now, when you look at the injuries going in fantasy football, I think it's hit the running back position a lot harder. Oh, and I think it's hit if any other position, and so I just personally believe in when you talk about Austin Hooper, and I'll say this before we wrap up. One thing I'll say about Austin Hooper, knowing him, in Atlanta, I'm just curious to see how Kevin Stefanski and that offensive crew over there in Cleveland are going to use him, because essentially he could be a very, very good third option behind Landry, and if OBJ, Austin Hooper, there's a reason why they paid Austin Hooper to be there. You didn't pay him to block for Nick Chubb. So, which is a bonus, but you pay him to go out into the open field, hit, get in the open field and make catches. And the reality is that I don't know how to feel about, Austin Hooper, how they're going to use him like you do. But if I'm Cleveland and if I'm a fan, or if you own him, as some people do in their league, it's really a situation where you really have to wait and see how they're going to use him, because the reality is, when you look at Cleveland, outside of Nick Chubb, there's not really, and maybe even Jarvis Landry, not really many viable fantasy options. I could be wrong for that, but there's not really many fantasy, value. And Hooper could be the next person on that team to have fantasy value, but I haven't seen it. And hopefully we do, as this Cleveland offense, hopefully figures it out.
I think so. So I'm actually one of those guys that scooped Austin Hooper up. I think that this week playing Washington, for me, and I think many others, because I've been watching the transaction trends, and he's already been being dropped by a lot of teams. This is my make it or break it week for Hooper. This is where I'm gonna keep him because he's gonna do good, or if he shits the bed again, I'm gonna have to start looking around for another tight end and see what happens. 'Cause I got him in one of my leagues, and something needs to make or break, I think. And like you said, he's too good just to be a pass blocker. So Baker Mayfield either needs to make that connection, or unfortunately, his fantasy stock, I think, is it's going to fall faster than Enron.
But so I on that note, that's how I kind of feel about that. I think he's the one guy I think if anybody should be using that roster, it should be Hooper. But before we wrap up, just to do some house cleaning, check us out on social media. Go to @SportsTheWorld on both Twitter and Instagram. Or go to the Facebook.com/SportsTheWorld, and also join our group there. You can check me out on Twitter at LaDarius_Brown. And I said I had a surprise for you guys. We're going to start putting episodes on YouTube, even if it's the audio version for now, to get more listeners, to get more of you guys to listen, to utilize the platform there. And from time to time, I'll be doing a video. The very first video that you'll see is my epic rant about Dan Quinn. And and it's all in on that. I'll leave it at that. So you can check us out on YouTube. It'll all be put out on social media. If not tonight, if not the release of the episode, but it will be out in the future where you can go to check out all the content there. But if there's anything else.
Yeah, one thing I actually wanted to jump in on, man. I'm sorry. And I had this written down and I wanted to bring it up at the end. Unfortunately, we lost another great professional wrestler today, being the Road Warrior Animal. So if you don't know who he is, he was a member of the Road Warriors, which was a tag team in the early 90s that bounced between WWF, now WWE, WCW, New Japan, and came back. And, honestly, growing up, these dudes were my absolute favorite tag team growing up, man. And so his partner in crime, Road Warrior Hawk, died back in 2005 of a heart attack. They haven't released necessarily the cause of death for Animal yet, which sucks because he was only 60 years old. However, he actually did die at Margaritaville, so I guess if there's a way to go out, that's what they're that's where they're saying his place of death was. But it's sad none the least. I think he was a pivotal. Him and Hawk, I think, were pivotal in the Attitude Era of the WWF because they were just so wild, and they had the shoulder pads with the spikes and the face paint, and they're just two badasses from Chicago who just went out and just dominated by any means necessary. And they had like that Mad Max theme, persona in the ring. And it's a shame to see him go, and it sucks. And so just make sure, most importantly, not that we're all, 60 years old, take care of your health. If you ain't feeling good, go get yourself checked out. We don't want any people, keeling over and croaking a little earlier than they should, man. So rest in peace, my man. You're reunited with your homie up in the clouds or wherever Road Warriors go. And yeah, man, rest in peace, dude.
Well said. And on top of that, we also lost, Gale Sayers, the great running back for the Chicago Bears. And, many people will tell you that Gale Sayers is probably one of the best running backs to ever play in the league. One of the, the way he would go up backfield, upfield, and the way he competed. And, like I said, 2020 has been a year for a lot of things, but I think 2020 is a year for us to supposedly come closer. And I don't want to make this to be like no soapbox speech, but it's always important to understand, the value of life, because sometimes, and I was talking to a friend of mine about this, other than you, Chris, other than you, I got, I was saying sometimes it's funny, and well, not so much as funny, but how we think, how we value life when it comes to death. We don't value life until someone dies, because we're too busy, living. We don't value it until we're dead. And it's always important to have value to people, to always understand that, hey, at the end of the day, no matter what our political differences are, no matter color of our, whatever you want to use, understand that life has value, and don't look at it this way, where say you got one life to live. Like when people say you only live once, no, you live every day. And like Chris says, go get yourself checked out. Make sure, don't live your life in regret either. So I'll leave it there. We lost two great human beings, thoughts and prayers to their families as well. And once again, you can catch this episode. You'll catch it on the audio version on YouTube. This will be on YouTube tomorrow afternoon. It'll be before the Thursday night game. So check that as well. Also, my rant on Jan Quinn will be out the same day as well. So you get a twofer. So until you hear us again, I'm LaDarius.
And I'm Chris.
Be real, be you, and be blessed, and be safe from all of us here from the Sports and the World podcast.
See you.